All right, so let's dive into something that I think every startup founder dreams about scaling up. Going from that Series A to Series B, you've got the funding, things are moving, but you
Yeah.
hit this point where maybe that old playbook isn't working so well anymore. It's a whole new ballgame, right?
Yeah.
And that's where I think this book we're diving into today by Charlie Cowan, his Revenue Operations Playbook, I think this is where it gets really interesting.
Yeah. And what's great about this book is it's really laser focused on founders. So Charlie really gets that founders listening to this are not just looking for generic advice.
Mm-hmm.
They want stuff that is practical, actionable, they can use right away.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what we're here for, right? To like
Hmm.
really extract the gold. I love digging into these meaty topics, and this playbook is just packed full of them. But how do we actually use this stuff? So that's what we're going to try to do is really distill it down.
Yeah, because here's the thing, right? So most Series A companies, they've gotten to this point, they're riding high, they've landed some big clients, 70% of the revenue is from new logos, but after that Series B, that kind of flips on its head.
Oh,
The
interesting.
majority has to come from your existing customers.
Oh, wow. So talk to me about that shift. Why is that such a crucial thing to nail down when you're gunning for that Series B?
Well, I mean, it comes down to sustainable growth, right? So
Yeah.
you can hustle, you can get those deals, you can do that at the beginning to get going. But to build an enduring company, you need a system, a repeatable, predictable way of generating revenue. And that means really maximizing the value of every single customer that you're getting.
So it's not just about that initial, kind of land grab. It's about really cultivating what you've already got.
Exactly, exactly. It's like the difference between a gold rush and owning a gold mine, right?
Yeah.
One is short-term gains, the other one you can build something on.
Yeah, it's a fundamentally different mindset, I imagine.
It is, it is.
And is that where revenue operations comes in? Because it's a little bit of a buzzword,
It
right?
is, it is.
But it's more than that, I think.
It is. It's about breaking down the silos between all your teams,
Yeah.
getting marketing and sales and customer success all on the same page, all understanding the customer journey and focused on driving that revenue growth.
Okay, so let's unpack that a little bit. Charlie spends a good chunk of the book talking about this idea of seeing the world through your buyer's eyes, which, okay, sounds simple enough, but I get the feeling there's a lot more to it than meets the eye.
Yeah, there really is.
Mm.
And he has this whole concept of the dark funnel, which honestly is a little unsettling when you first hear about it. It's basically all of the information that your buyers are consuming that you have zero control over. Reviews, competitor comparisons, all the conversations that are happening, offline that you're just not privy to. And it really is this hidden world of influence that most founders, they don't realize how much is happening that they just don't see.
So how do you shed some light on that dark funnel? Do you have to like hire a team of internet sleuths to go out there and figure out what people are saying?
Well, I mean, you don't have to go full Sherlock Holmes on it, but you definitely need to get proactive. And there's some clever tactics that Charlie talks about for,
Hmm.
really trying to uncover these anxieties and desires that are driving your buyers.
Hmm.
One of the ones that I find really powerful is this idea of jobs to be done. Have you heard of that before?
I have, yeah. It's one of those things that I hear thrown around a lot, but in this context, what does that actually mean?
So it's about really trying to understand the underlying motivations and anxieties that are driving people to make decisions.
Hmm.
So not just the features, not the price tag, but what are the emotional and social factors at play? Like, will this make me look good? Will
Yeah.
this get me that promotion? It's those kinds of
Yeah,
things.
those are the things that keep us up at night,
Yeah.
right? Like, will this
Yeah.
help me get ahead?
And if you can understand that and then address that in a way that really resonates with your buyers, you're not just selling a product, you're offering a solution to a really deeply felt need.
Right. And that's got to be a lot more powerful than just saying, like, hey, buy my widget. It's got, feature X. You're speaking to something that's a core need.
Absolutely. And it builds trust, which is huge when you're trying to build a long-term customer.
Totally. And it's interesting. So we're starting to get into the minds of our buyers a little bit more. But then Charlie takes it even a step further and says, okay, well, here's a way to actually understand what's pulling those buyers in different directions. And I thought this was fascinating.
Yeah, he lays out these four forces of change that are constantly influencing whether or not a buyer is going to make a decision. And what I appreciate about it is he doesn't just list them. He really breaks down like how they play out in the real world, which I think is really helpful.
Okay, let's break it down because I think actually understanding those forces is probably pretty crucial to then applying it.
Yeah, totally, totally. So first you have push, right? So that's the pain of sticking with the status quo. So what are the frustrations, the inefficiencies, the missed opportunities? What's pushing your buyer to look for a solution?
So their current system is clunky or it's costing them time and money. And I'm like, I'm ready for something different, but I just don't know where to turn.
Exactly, exactly. Then you've got pull. So that's the allure of what you can offer. So that's the promise of a better future, the excitement of new possibilities, that relief of knowing that there is a solution out there.
It's like that feeling of, oh, this could actually change everything.
Yeah.
Like that feeling of aspiration.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And then you get into the ones that I think a lot of people don't realize are so powerful. Anxiety,
Okay.
the fear of making the wrong decision.
Yeah.
So even if your product is amazing, you know, they're still going to hesitate. They're going to worry about disrupting their workflow, wasting money, looking bad to their team.
So even if they're feeling that push and they're feeling that pull, that anxiety can still hold them back.
It's powerful. And then the last one is habit, which is the ingrained way of doing things, which that's a hard one to break. I mean, even if they know there's a better way, even if they're feeling the pain of not switching, there's comfort in familiarity.
Better the devil you know.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so all four of these forces are constantly at play, right?
Yeah.
So it creates this complex web of influence that's shaping your buyer's decisions.
So understanding those forces is one thing, but how do you then use that to your advantage?
Right. That's where this whole, pipeline generation strategy that Charlie lays out comes in. So there's a whole chapter on this. He really gets into the tactical stuff here. Like, how do you actually go out and get more leads in the pipeline? And he's got these 10 quick pipeline boosters, things you can start implementing, tomorrow, no massive overhaul required.
Yeah. Okay, well, give me an example. What's one that stood out to you?
Yeah, so the one that I think is gold, especially for companies at this stage, is pick a niche and learn from your customers.
Oh, interesting. So instead of trying to be everything to everyone, you're saying like really go deep, not wide.
Exactly. Become the undisputed expert in that niche. Understand their challenges, their language, their hopes, their dreams better than they do.
It's like that old adage, if you're talking to everyone, you're talking to no one.
Right. Yeah.
But how does that actually play out? Like when you're talking about revenue growth, what does it look like to actually focus on a niche?
When you truly understand your niche, you can tailor everything. I'm talking your messaging, your content, your entire sales process to resonate with those buyers.
It's like you're speaking their language instead of having to use like a phrase book to try to figure it out.
Exactly. Exactly. And that level of understanding, that
Yeah.
builds trust and credibility, and ultimately it leads to higher conversions.
That makes total sense. Let's switch gears a little bit here. We've talked a lot about kind of understanding the customer journey, getting inside their heads. But what about our own house? Like, how do you actually build the internal machine to support this kind of revenue growth?
And that's honestly where a lot of companies stumble, is they might have the right idea in terms of how they're approaching customers, but then internally they don't have their stuff together. And that's where Charlie's really big on having a clear 3-year vision.
Not just your typical like annual plan.
No, this is bigger. This is bolder. This is like, where do we want to be in 3 years? And then getting everyone in the company aligned around that ambition.
So it's like that North Star that guides every decision, every investment you make.
Exactly. But it can't just be this, fluffy aspiration. Charlie's a huge proponent of using OKR's objectives and key results.
Yeah, okay.
You've got to have that.
It's like everyone's talking about OKRs these days, but to be honest with you, a lot of the companies that I talk to, they struggle to actually implement them in a way that feels useful.
Yeah, the key is to keep it really simple and focused.
Okay.
Don't try to boil the ocean. So instead of having like a million OKRs, identify like the 3 to 5 most critical objectives for the next quarter, the things that are really going to move the needle toward that big vision. And then define like what are the key results that we need to hit to prove that we're making progress.
So it's like really ruthlessly prioritizing and then making sure everyone's on the same page.
Yeah.
How do you then keep those silos from creeping back in? Because even if everyone's got like good intentions, it's so easy for, marketing to fall into their own world, sales to fall into theirs, and customer success, they're all doing their own thing.
And that's such a common problem that companies run into as they grow. And honestly, that's where I think Charlie's advice on actually structuring a revenue operations team is pure gold. Like, he has a whole chapter on this, and I think it's one of those things that's worth revisiting multiple times as you grow.
Yeah, well, and we don't have multiple episodes to dedicate to just this one chapter, but what are some of the like key takeaways you got from it when it comes to like structuring a revenue operations team for a company at this stage?
Yeah, so one of the most important things is defining really clear roles and responsibilities. So like, who owns what? Who makes the call if there's overlap? Like, you need to remove any ambiguity.
Right. Because if everyone's responsible, then no one's responsible. Right.
Exactly. And ambiguity just leads to confusion. It leads to like wasted effort. And ultimately, you're leaving revenue on the table.
Totally. So clear roles and responsibilities, that's key. What else is like a non-negotiable for building that like well-oiled machine?
Communication, communication, communication. Like, it sounds so basic, but Charlie really emphasizes how important it is to create a culture of really open, transparent communication across every team.
Yeah, and so what does that look like in practice though? Like how do you actually make that happen?
Yeah, so break down those departmental silos, create more opportunities for cross-functional collaboration, have regular meetings where marketing, sales, customer success are in the same room, sharing updates, brainstorming solutions, making sure that they're all aligned on strategy.
So it's really about like creating that shared understanding of what that customer journey actually looks like and then making sure that everyone's working together.
Exactly, exactly. Because at the end of the day, the customer doesn't care about your internal silos, right?
Yeah, they
They
don't.
want a solution to their problem.
Yeah,
And if you can do that consistently, then you're in a good spot.
that makes a lot of sense. Now, let's talk about something that I think is a little bit uncomfortable, especially for founders who, they're used to wearing all the hats, and that's delegation.
Yes,
Because Charlie really emphasizes that. It's like, you got to build a team that you trust,
absolutely.
and you have to empower them to own their domains.
That's one of the hardest things for entrepreneurs to do as your company grows because they're so used to, being in control of every detail. But as you scale, that becomes impossible. And honestly, it hinders your growth if you try to hold on too tightly.
It's like that image of someone trying to conduct an orchestra while also playing all the instruments at the same time, right?
Exactly.
You just can't do it all.
You can't.
So, founder listening to this, if you feel that pull to micromanage, resist.
Yeah, trust your team, empower them to excel, and you focus on the vision.
That's such good advice.
I
Now, we
couldn't.
can't talk about scaling a startup without actually talking about like the nitty-gritty financial side of things.
Right.
And Charlie doesn't shy away from those tougher conversations.
Yeah, he digs into some really critical and honestly, I think, often overlooked areas that become really, really important as you start to scale past that Series A.
And he kind of buckets it into three key capabilities: data, compensation, and saying no to bad deals.
Which all kind of, they tie together in really interesting ways, and each one of them is crucial in its own right.
Okay.
But I think we should start with data
Right.
because it continues to amaze me how many companies, even successful ones, they're sitting on this gold mine of information
It's true.
and they have no idea how to actually use it effectively.
It's like having a library full of first editions and never opening a single one.
Yeah, and Charlie has this, he calls it the data matrix, which I think is a really, really helpful framework for thinking about this.
Okay, so break down the data matrix. Like, what is that, and how can it actually help a company at this stage?
So essentially what you're doing is you're mapping out all of your data sources, right? So you've got your CRM, you've got your marketing automation platform, you've got, your website analytics, your customer support tickets, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Get it all out there. And then you start to look for like, okay, what are the gaps? Where are we missing information? And then, most importantly, how can we start connecting the dots to uncover hidden patterns and insights that can really move the needle?
So you're turning that data into, like, actionable intelligence.
Exactly. For example, you might discover that, a certain type of content is highly correlated with closing high-value deals, or that there are certain buyer behaviors that are strong indicators of churn risk. And those insights can revolutionize your sales process. They can completely change how you're, personalizing your marketing. You can even start to proactively address customer issues before they become a big problem.
Oh, it's like having a crystal ball into the future of your revenue. That's amazing. Okay, so we've tackled data. What about compensation? Because I feel like this is where things get a little messy, especially as companies grow and those incentives become more complex.
Oh, tell me about it. Compensation, I think, is one of those things that can either be a really powerful alignment tool or it can be a recipe for disaster,
Right.
especially as you grow,
Yeah.
Because what happens is you have all these good intentions, but then you end up with this plan that looks great on paper,
Right.
but then it ends up rewarding the wrong behaviors. So you have salespeople, they're incentivized to close any deal. They don't care if it's good for long-term. Marketing, they're off chasing vanity metrics instead of actually, bringing in those qualified leads.
It's all short-term gain, long-term pain.
Exactly. Exactly.
And that's where I think Charlie's concept of this revenue alignment comes in because it's not just about like individual performance at that point. It's about the collective success of that entire revenue team.
100%.
Yeah.
And it starts with designing a compensation plan that incentivizes everyone, marketing, sales, customer success, to row in the same direction.
Right.
Like, are we rewarding the things that we say are important? Collaboration,
Yeah.
putting the customer first,
Hmm.
the things that are actually going to drive sustainable, profitable growth.
Right. Are you incentivizing the behaviors that are going to get you to that long-term vision?
Exactly. And that's why, again, we keep coming back to it. But that 3-year vision is
Yeah.
so important. It's not enough to just have it, documented somewhere. You have to constantly be communicating it, making sure that everyone understands how their role plays into that bigger picture.
Yeah, because then you can tie it back and say, look, this is how what you're doing is contributing to this thing that we're all working toward.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay, so we've covered data, compensation. That leaves us with this final capability, saying no to bad deals,
Yes,
which feels, again, a little counterintuitive.
it does.
Especially like you're a startup, you're hungry for growth, you want to say yes to everything.
Right, right. It's a muscle, honestly, that I think a lot of founders, especially those that come from like a sales background, they really have to develop.
Oh, yeah.
But it's so important for building a healthy business.
Because not all revenue is created equal. Like you might get that deal that looks great on paper, but then it ends up costing you more in the long run.
Exactly, exactly. And that's where having a really strong deal desk function comes in. And Charlie talks about how it's not about being like the deal police
Right.
and shutting everything down. It's about having a really strategic process for evaluating opportunities, protecting your margins, and making sure that every deal you close is a good deal for the business in the long run.
So it's like having that like guardian angel on your shoulder, just like, okay, wait, but what about this? Have you thought about that?
Right.
Just to make sure that you're not making those decisions that could hurt you later on. Now, before we wrap up, I want to circle back to something that you said earlier about that mindset shift. That is so crucial for like moving past that Series A,
Mhm.
and it's moving away from that kind of gold rush mentality to something that's way more sustainable long term.
Yeah, it really is a fundamental shift. And it touches on, all the things we talked about. It's moving from chasing every deal to building that predictable revenue engine.
Right.
It's about prioritizing customer lifetime value over those short-term gains. It's about building a company that's built to last, not just, make a quick exit.
And that's really what I think is at the heart of, Charlie's Revenue Operations Playbook is giving founders the tools, the frameworks they need to really build that kind of enduring success. This has been a fantastic deep dive, by the way. I feel like I've learned so much, so thank you for sharing your insights.
My pleasure. It's
Yeah.
always fun to geek out on this stuff, so.
Yeah. And for those of you listening, I hope you're walking away feeling energized, equipped to tackle these challenges, because you know what? Scaling a startup is hard.
It is.
But with the right mindset, the right team, the right systems in place, you can do incredible things.
Absolutely.
And on that note, we'll leave you with this final thought from Charlie's book. He says, even large companies are still struggling to define what revenue operations means.
It's true.
This is your opportunity to define it for your company.
That's right. What is it for you?
What is it for you? What is
know.
your unique approach going to be? So that's the question we challenge you to explore. And as always, we're here to support you on that journey. You'll find a link to Charlie's Revenue Operations Playbook, along with some other helpful resources in the show notes.
Until next time.
Keep diving deep.